The metal floor of the ship vibrated under Sergeant Kim Tae-ho's heavy boots as he walked down the long hallway. His left leg made a soft whirring sound with each step. The titanium joints needed oil again, but there was no time for maintenance. Now, red lights flashed along the walls, casting strange shadows on his face. Half of that face was still human skin. The other half was silver metal with a glowing blue eye that never blinked. Tae-ho stopped in front of the command room door. The scanner read his face and opened with a hiss. Inside, Commander Park So-min stood looking out at the stars through a huge window. Her uniform was perfectly clean, not like his battle-worn gear. She turned when she heard him enter. "Sergeant." "Kim," she said. Her voice was cold and professional. "You're late." "Sorry, Commander," Tae-ho replied. His voice sounded strange, part human and part machine. "The medical bay was running diagnostics on my systems." Commander Park nodded and walked to a large table in the center of the room. A holographic image appeared above it, showing a planet with purple clouds and two bright suns. The planet looked beautiful from space, but Tae-ho knew looks could lie. "This is Kepler 442b, Commander Park said, pointing at the image. "Our scouts found him there 3 days ago." Tae-ho knew who him was without asking. For 30 years, the human coalition had been hunting dragons across the galaxy. Most people thought dragons were just stories from old Earth, but Tae-ho had seen the burned cities and melted metal that proved they were real and very dangerous. "Ethan," he said quietly. "Yes," Commander Park confirmed, "the last one." The door opened again and Dr. Lee Ji-woo entered carrying a tablet computer. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She had been studying dragons for 15 years, ever since they destroyed her research station on Mars Colony 7. "Sergeant Kim," Dr. Lee said, nodding to him. She touched her tablet and more images appeared above the table. These showed a massive red creature with wings like burning metal and teeth longer than swords. "This is what we know about Ethan." Tae-ho studied the dragon's image. Even in a hologram, the creature looked powerful and dangerous. Its eyes seemed to stare right at him. "He's over 2,000 years old," Dr. Lee continued. "The oldest dragon we have ever found. Intelligence suggests he has been hiding in the crystal caves on the North Continent. Our previous teams—" She paused and looked down at her tablet. "They did not return." Tae-ho remembered those teams. Good soldiers, some of them his friends. The dragons had a way of getting inside people's heads, making them see things that were not there. That was why the Coalition had created soldiers like him. Cyborgs were harder to fool than regular humans. "What about the settlements?" Tae-ho asked. Commander Park's face became angry. "New Sol Colony. Population 12,000. Gone. Firebase Delta with 300 Marines. Gone. The mining station at the South Pole with its 50 workers. All gone." She slammed her hand on the table. "This monster has killed over 12,000 humans, Sergeant. Innocent people who just wanted to build new lives on a new world." Tae-ho nodded but said nothing. He had heard these numbers before. Each death was another reason why the dragons had to die. At least, that was what he told himself when he could not sleep at night. Dr. Lee touched her tablet again. The hologram changed to show detailed scans of Tae-ho's body. His skeleton showed as white lines, but most of it was not bone anymore. Metal replacements glowed blue where his arms and legs used to be. His heart was a mechanical pump. His lungs were filters that could work in any atmosphere. "Your cybernetic systems make you the only soldier capable of surviving close combat with Ethan," Dr. Lee explained. "Your skin can resist temperatures up to 3,000 degrees. Your neural implants should protect you from psychic attacks. And your strength... She gestured at his metal arms. "You can lift 3 tons and punch through steel walls." Tae-ho looked at his hands. They looked almost human, but he knew what was underneath the synthetic skin: servos and actuators, titanium bones and carbon fiber muscles. Sometimes he tried to remember what his real hands had felt like, but the memories were getting harder to find. "The mission is simple," Commander Park said. She walked around the table until she was standing close to him. "You will drop to the surface alone, find the dragon, kill it, signal for pickup. Clean and efficient. What about orbital bombardment?" Taeho asked. "We could just blast the caves from space." Dr. Lee shook her head. "The caves are too deep. Our weapons cannot reach. That far underground, and ... she hesitated. "We need proof that Ethan is dead. The other colonies need to see his body, or they will never feel safe." Taeho understood. Fear was a powerful thing. People needed to know their nightmares were finally over. Commander Park walked back to the window. "You ship out in 1 hour? Sergeant, get your weapons and equipment ready." "Yes, ma'am," Taeho said. He turned to leave, but Commander Park called his name. "Taeho!" She used his first name, which she rarely did. "I know this is not easy, but remember why you volunteered? For the Cyborg program. Remember what they took from you." Taeho's human eye closed for a moment. He could still see his family's farm in his memory. The green rice fields, his mother's smile, his father's strong hands, his little sister's laugh. All of it burned away in one night 15 years ago when the dragons came to Earth. "I remember," he said quietly. He left the command room and walked back through the ship's corridors. Other soldiers he passed looked at him with mixtures of respect and fear. They knew what he was. What he had become? A weapon designed for one purpose, to kill dragons. In his quarters, Taeho sat on his narrow bed and stared at the wall. A small mirror hung there, and he could see his reflection. Half human, half machine. Neither fully one thing nor the other. He had given up his humanity to become strong enough to protect other humans. Sometimes he wondered if it had been worth the trade. His mechanical systems ran their evening diagnostics while he tried to rest. Tomorrow he would drop to an alien world and face the last dragon in the galaxy. One of them would not survive the encounter. Taeho hoped it would not be him. The drop pod shook violently as it cut through Kepler 442b's thick atmosphere. Taeho gripped the metal handles on both sides of his seat. His cybernetic systems automatically adjusted to keep him stable, but the turbulence was still rough. Through the small window, he could see purple clouds rushing past. Lightning flashed in bright colors he had never seen before. His heads-up display showed altitude numbers dropping fast. 20,000 meters. 15,000, 10,000. The pods. Heat shields glowed red-hot from the friction. Any normal human would have been cooked alive by now, but Taeho's modified body could handle the extreme temperatures. "Landing in 30 seconds, the pod's computer announced in a calm female voice. It sounded almost bored, like landing on alien planets was just another ordinary day. Taeho checked his weapons one more time. His plasma rifle was charged and ready. His sidearm was loaded with armor-piercing rounds. The combat knife on his belt could cut through titanium. Everything was perfect for killing a dragon. At least he hoped it was. The pod hit the ground hard. The impact threw Taeho forward against his restraints, but his metal spine absorbed most of the shock. Steam hissed from the cooling systems as the door blew open with an explosive charge. Bright alien sunlight poured into the pod. Taeho stepped out onto the surface of Kepler 442b and immediately understood why humans had wanted to colonize this place. The landscape was beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Tall spires of crystal rose from the ground like frozen lightning. They caught the light from the planet's twin suns and threw rainbows in every direction. Purple grass covered the ground, soft as silk under his heavy boots, but the beauty was mixed with something else. Something wrong. His sensors detected high levels of radiation in the air. Not enough to kill a human quickly, but enough to make them sick over time. The atmosphere was breathable, but it smelled of sulfur and burned metal. And everywhere he looked, he saw signs of destruction. A kilometer to his east, the remains of what had once been a human settlement stuck up from the purple grass like broken teeth. The buildings were melted and twisted into impossible shapes. Some of the metal had been turned into glass by incredible heat. Others looked like they had been stepped on by something massive. This had been New Soul Colony. Taeho had seen the Pictures in the briefing files, but seeing the destruction in person was different. 12,000 people had lived here just 6 months ago. Now there was nothing left but ruins and memories. He activated his long-range sensors and immediately detected the heat signature he was looking for. 3 kilometers north, in a range of crystal mountains, something very large and very hot was resting in a deep cave system. The readings were off the charts. No human technology could generate that much thermal energy. Ethan was home. Tejo started walking toward the mountains. His mechanical legs carried him faster than any normal human could move, but he kept his pace steady to conserve power. The twin suns were high overhead, casting double shadows on everything. The effect was disorienting, but his cybernetic eye automatically adjusted to help him see clearly. As he walked through the ruins of New Sol Colony, he tried not to look too closely at what remained, but sometimes he could not help himself. A child's toy, melted but still recognizable. A wedding ring fused to a piece of concrete. A family photograph, somehow untouched by the destruction around it. His emotional dampeners kicked in, trying to suppress the feelings these sights brought up. But they were not perfect. Part of him still remembered being human. Part of him still felt anger and sadness and loss. He passed the colony's main square, where a statue had once stood. Now only the base remained, with words carved in Korean, that he could still read, "To new beginnings and bright futures." The irony was not lost on him. Beyond the colony, the landscape changed. The purple grass gave way to rocky ground covered in strange moss that glowed with its own light. The crystal spires became taller and more frequent, some of them reaching hundreds of meters into the violet sky. His sensors detected movement in the distance. Tejo raised his rifle and zoomed in with his cybernetic eye. What he saw made him lower the weapon again. Animals, alien creatures unlike anything he had ever seen before, but clearly harmless. They looked like deer, but with 6 legs and antlers made of the same crystal as the spires around them. They moved gracefully through the glowing moss, eating the plants and paying no attention to the armed cyborg watching them. Further on, he saw more alien life. Creatures that looked like floating jellyfish drifted through the air in groups, making musical sounds as they moved. Their bodies were transparent, and he could see light pulsing through them like slow heartbeats. The sounds they made were hauntingly beautiful, like a choir singing in a language he did not understand. Trees grew in clusters throughout the area, but these were unlike any trees from Earth. Their trunks were silver and smooth, and their leaves changed color as he watched, shifting from blue to green to gold and back again. The trees seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as the floating jellyfish, as if they were all connected somehow. For the first time in years, Tejo stopped walking and just stood still, watching the alien ecosystem around him. Everything seemed to be in harmony. The deer-like creatures grazed peacefully while the jellyfish sang overhead. The trees swayed gently in a breeze that smelled of flowers and rain. It was beautiful and peaceful and completely at odds with the destruction he had seen at the colony. A thought occurred to him that he immediately tried to suppress. What if the dragons were not the monsters the coalition said they were? What if they were just protecting their world from human invasion? No. He shook his head and forced himself to keep walking. That was exactly the kind of thinking that got soldiers killed. Dragons were killers. They had proven that on Earth 15 years ago. They had proven it again here 6 months ago. His job was not to think or question or wonder. His job was to complete the mission, but as he got closer to the Crystal Mountains, the thought kept coming back. The alien world around him was so peaceful and beautiful. It did not look like the home of a monster. It looked like paradise. His sensors beeped. The heat signature was getting stronger. Ethan was close now, probably sleeping in the deepest part of the cave system ahead. Soon, Tejo would face the last dragon in the galaxy. He checked his weapons one more time and continued toward the mountains, trying not to think about the peaceful creatures he was leaving behind. The entrance to the crystal caves was like a mouth in the mountain. Jagged formations of blue and white crystal hung from the top like teeth. Tejo's sensors showed the tunnel going deep into the earth, twisting and turning in ways that made no sense. The air coming from inside was warm and smelled of old metal and something else he could not identify. He switched on his helmet lights and stepped into the darkness. The walls around him were covered in crystals that reflected his lights, back in thousands of tiny rainbows. His footsteps echoed strangely in the tunnel, as if the sound was being stretched and changed by the crystal formations. As he walked deeper, he began to see things that made him stop and stare. The walls were covered with strange markings that looked almost like writing, but in no language he had ever seen. The symbols seemed to glow with their own faint light, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat, but it was what filled the caves that truly amazed him. Treasures beyond counting lined the tunnels and filled every chamber he passed through. Golden statues from worlds he had never heard of. Crystalline art pieces that seemed to move and change as he looked at them. Technology so advanced he could not even guess what it was meant to do. In one chamber, he found weapons that looked like they were made of solid light. In another, books written on sheets of metal that glowed when he touched them. There were crowns and jewelry and sculptures that told stories he could not understand. Every piece was beautiful and obviously valuable, but they were just sitting here in the dark, collecting dust. His cybernetic brain tried to calculate the worth of what he was seeing, but gave up after the numbers became too large. This was the treasure hoard of a creature that had lived for thousands of years, collecting the most beautiful and important artifacts from dozens of civilizations, but there was something sad about it too. Many of the treasures came from species that no longer existed, races that had been wiped out by war or disease or natural disaster. The dragon had saved their art and their history, but the people who made these things were gone forever. Tejo kept walking, going deeper and deeper into the mountain. His sensors showed he was getting close to the massive heat source at the center of the cave system. The air was getting warmer, and he could hear something that might have been breathing echoing from somewhere ahead. Finally, he stepped out of a narrow tunnel and into a vast cavern that took his breath away. The ceiling was so high his lights could not reach it. Crystal formations the size of buildings grew from the floor and walls, filling the space with soft, colored light. And in the center of it all, lying on a bed of golden coins and precious gems, was the dragon. Ethan was even larger than the holographic images had shown. His body was easily 40 meters long from nose to tail. His scales were deep red like liquid fire, and they seemed to glow from within. His wings were folded against his sides, but Tejo could see they would span the entire width of the cavern when extended. The dragon's head was massive, with teeth longer than Tejo's entire body. His eyes were closed, but even in sleep there was something majestic and terrible about him. This was a creature that had seen the birth and death of stars, that had watched civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. Tejo raised his plasma rifle and took aim at the dragon's head. One shot, right between the eyes, and it would all be over. The last dragon would be dead, and humanity would be safe from these ancient monsters forever. But as he prepared to fire, Ethan's eyes opened. They were like molten gold, ancient and intelligent and utterly alien. They looked directly at Tejo, and he felt something touch his mind. It was gentle at first, like a whisper in his thoughts, but then it became stronger. "Another metal puppet," a voice said inside his head. It was deep and rich, like the sound of distant thunder. "Come to finish what your kind began." Tejo kept his rifle aimed at the dragon's head, but his finger hesitated on the trigger. "You killed 12,000 innocent people," he said aloud. Ethan's massive head tilted slightly, studying the cyborg soldier. "Innocent," the dragon repeated, and there was something like sadness in his mental voice. "Is that what they told you we were fighting over?" "You destroyed 3 human colonies," Tejo said. "You murdered familess children." "And how many of my kind have your people murdered?" Ethan asked. "How many dragons have you hunted across the stars like animals? How many eggs have you smashed before they could hatch?" Images flooded into Tejo's mind. Dragons flying through space between the stars. Dragon families living peacefully on distant worlds. Human ships arriving with weapons and fire. Dragon cities burning. Dragon children crying for parents who would never come home. We were not conquerors, Ethan continued. We were guardians. For millions of years, we watched over the young races of the galaxy. We protected them from themselves, helped them grow wise before they became powerful. We prevented wars that would have destroyed entire star systems. More images flowed through the mental connection. Dragons stopping nuclear wars on primitive worlds. Dragons teaching young civilizations about art and science and philosophy. Dragons sacrificing themselves to save entire species from extinction. But your kind was different, Ethan said, and now his voice was filled with ancient pain. Humans learn to kill before they learn to love. You reached the stars with weapons in your hands and conquest in your hearts. You saw us not as teachers but as obstacles to be removed. Tejo's rifle wavered. You attacked Earth, you killed my family. We defended ourselves, Ethan replied. When humans began hunting us, we fought back. But we were few, and you were many. One by one, my brothers and sisters fell to your weapons. Now I am the last. The dragon slowly raised his great head, making no aggressive moves. Tell me, child of flesh and steel, do you know why your leaders truly fear us? It is not because we are strong or dangerous. It is because we remember. We remember what the galaxy was like before humanity came. We remember the civilizations you destroyed to build your empire. We are living proof that there was once a better way. Tejo's cybernetic systems were analyzing everything the dragon had shown him, cross-referencing it with historical databases in his memory banks. To his horror, much of what Ethan had shared matched with classified files he had never seen before. Files that painted a very different picture of humanity's expansion into space. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Ethan's golden eyes never left his face. Because you are the last soldier they will send. After you, there will be no more need for dragon hunters. With my death, the last memory of what we were dies too. The dragon's voice became quieter, more tired. I am old, young warrior. I have lived for 2,000 years, and I am ready to rest. But before I go, someone should know the truth. Tejo's rifle shook in his hands. Everything he believed about dragons, about his mission, about the righteousness of humanity's cause, was crumbling around him, but his orders were clear. The last dragon had to die. I have my orders, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Yes, Ethan agreed. You do. The question is, will you follow them? Tejo kept his weapon trained on Ethan's massive head, but doubt was eating at his resolve like acid. Everything the dragon had shown him felt true, but his training told him this was exactly what dragons did. They got inside your head. They made you question everything. They turned you against your own kind. You are trying to confuse me, he said. Though his voice sounded uncertain even to himself, Ethan's golden eyes showed what might have been amusement. Am I simply showing you what your leaders do not want you to see? The dragon shifted slightly on his bed of treasure, and coins cascaded down the sides like a golden waterfall. But perhaps words are not enough. Perhaps you need proof. That was when Tejo heard it. A sound so small and quiet that his human ears would never have caught it, but his cybernetic hearing enhancement picked it up clearly. Tiny whimpers, coming from somewhere behind the great dragon. The sounds were high-pitched and desperate, like baby animals calling for their mother. Tejo's tactical systems immediately analyzed the sounds. His database compared them to thousands of recorded animal calls. The results came back quickly. Juvenile dragon vocalizations. Distress calls. What is that? He asked. Though part of him already knew the answer. Ethan's massive head turned slightly, looking back toward the source of the sounds. When he looked back at Tejo, there was something new in his ancient eyes. Love, pride, and desperate, overwhelming fear. The reason I cannot simply lie down and die? The dragon said softly, against his better judgment. Tejo moved around the dragon's massive form, keeping his rifle ready but no longer aiming directly at Ethan's head. What he saw in the shadows behind the great creature made him stop breathing. A nest. But not like any bird's nest he had ever seen. This was a work of art, woven from precious metals and rare crystals. Silver threads held sapphires and emeralds in intricate patterns. Golden wire supported walls of woven platinum. It was beautiful beyond description, and it glowed with its own internal light. Inside the nest were 3 eggs, each about the size of his head. But 2 of them had already cracked open. From the broken shells, 2 tiny dragons looked up at him with enormous eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. They were no bigger than house cats, with scales that shifted through every color of the rainbow. Their wings were delicate and translucent, like stained glass windows. The 3rd egg showed cracks along its surface. Something inside was struggling to break free, making the tiny whimpering sounds he had heard. "Children," Taeho whispered. "The last dragon eggs in the entire galaxy," Ethan confirmed. His mental voice was filled with both pride and heartbreak. "My mate died 3 years ago, hunted down by your people on the moons of Centauri. These are all that remain of our species." The 2 hatched dragons looked at Taeho without fear. One of them, with scales that seemed to contain tiny stars, made a soft cooing sound. The other, whose colors shifted like aurolights, stretched out one tiny wing toward him. "They are beautiful," Taeho said, and meant it. These were not the monsters from coalition propaganda. They were babies, innocent and vulnerable and absolutely gorgeous. "Dragons are not born knowing how to breathe fire or fight," Ethan explained. "We must learn these things, just as human children must learn to walk and talk. My little ones have never hurt anyone. They have never even seen another living creature besides myself." As if to prove his point, the star-scaled dragon made another cooing sound and tried to crawl toward Taeho. Its movements were clumsy and uncertain like any baby animal. When it reached the edge of the nest, it looked down at the distance to the ground and made a scared, whimpering sound. "Easy, little one," Taeho found himself saying. He took a step closer to the nest, and both baby dragons looked up at him with curious eyes. "I am not going to hurt you." "They like you," Ethan observed. "Dragons have always been able to sense the true nature of other beings. They see past the metal and circuits to the human heart that still beats within you." The 3rd egg cracked louder, and part of the shell fell away. A tiny silver snout poked through the opening, followed by one bright blue eye. The baby dragon inside was struggling to break free, but it was clearly weak from the effort. "Help." "Me understand?" Taeho said, lowering his rifle. "You destroyed human colonies. You killed thousands of people. How can you ask me to spare your children when you showed no mercy to ours?" Ethan's great head lowered until it was resting on the ground near the nest. His voice in Taeho's mind became tired and filled with old pain. "Every human settlement I attacked was built on the ruins of something else," the dragon said. "New Soul Colony was constructed on the burial ground of the ethereal ones, a species that lived here for 50,000 years before humans arrived. Your people dug up their sacred sites to build shopping centers and parking lots." Images flowed through the mental link again. Tall, graceful beings made of pure light, living in harmony with the crystal forests of Kepler 442, human ships arriving and claiming the planet as uninhabited. Bulldozers destroying monuments older than human civilization. The ethereal ones fading away as their connection to the land was severed. "I tried to warn your colonists," Ethan continued. "I appeared to their leaders in dreams, showing them what they were destroying. I sent signs and omens. But humans do not listen to warnings from dragons. So I did what I had to do to protect what remained of the ethereal one's legacy." "By killing innocent people," Taeho said, but his anger was weaker now. "By stopping the desecration of an entire civilization's memory," Ethan replied. "Those humans were not evil, but they were ignorant. They did not know or care what they were destroying. I gave them chances to leave peacefully. They chose to fight instead." The 3rd egg cracked completely open, and a tiny silver dragon tumbled out onto the soft bedding of the nest. This one was even smaller than the other 2, with scales that looked like liquid mercury and eyes like chips of blue ice. It made weak crying sounds, clearly exhausted from hatching without thinking. Tejo reached out with one cybernetic hand to steady the newborn dragon. His metal fingers were gentle, supporting the tiny creature until it found its balance. The baby dragon looked up at him and made a soft, trusting sound. "She likes you," Ethan said, and there was wonder in his voice. "She has never seen anything but darkness inside that egg, but she trusts you completely." Tejo stared down at the tiny silver dragon in his palm. She was so small, so fragile. Her scales were warm against his artificial skin, and her little heart was beating fast with the excitement of being born. This was not a monster or a threat to humanity. This was a baby who needed protection and love. "What are their names?" he asked. "Dragons choose their own names when they are old enough to speak," Ethan replied. "But in my heart, I call the star-scaled one Hope, because she was the first to hatch and showed me that my line would continue. The rainbow-scaled one I call Joy, because her colors bring light to the darkness of this cave, and the little silver one," his voice became softer, "I call her Peace, because she was born at the moment when a human soldier chose to show mercy rather than follow orders." Tejo looked up sharply. "I have not made any choice yet." "Have you not?" Ethan asked gently. Then why are you holding my daughter instead of pointing your weapon at my heart?" Tejo realized the dragon was right. His rifle was slung over his shoulder, forgotten. Both his hands were cupping the tiny silver dragon, protecting her from falling. When had he made that decision? He could not remember the exact moment, but somewhere in the last few minutes, everything had changed. His communication system crackled. To life, Commander Park So-min's voice filled the cavern, cold and impatient. "Sergeant Kim, report your status immediately. You have been dark for 37 minutes. Confirm target elimination or we will begin orbital bombardment in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Tejo looked at the baby dragons, then at their ancient father. In 10 minutes, this entire mountain would be reduced to molten rock and ash. The last dragons in the galaxy would die, and with them, the memory of what dragons had really been, unless he did something to stop it. Tejo stared at the communication device on his wrist as Commander Park's voice echoed through the crystal cavern. 10 minutes until orbital bombardment. 10 minutes to decide between following orders and following his conscience. Sergeant Kim, respond immediately, Commander Park's voice crackled again. We are reading your life signs so we know you are alive. Report your status. The tiny silver dragon in his hands made a soft chirping sound, looking up at him with complete trust. Her brothers moved closer in the nest, sensing something was wrong. Their tiny eyes reflected the crystal light like jewels. Your commanders will not wait much longer, Ethan said quietly. They have waited 30 years to be rid of dragons. They will not let sentiment stop them now. Tejo looked at his weapon, then at the baby dragons, then at the ancient creature watching him with golden eyes. Everything he had been taught said he should complete his mission. Dragons were enemies of humanity. They were killers and destroyers. But the evidence in front of him told a different story. There is something else I must show you, Ethan said. Something that will help you understand what is truly at stake here. The dragon's consciousness reached out to Tejo again, but this time it was different. Instead of showing him memories, Ethan was sharing something deeper, knowledge, understanding. The accumulated wisdom of 2,000 years. Suddenly, Tejo could feel everything the dragon felt. He sensed the life force of every creature on the planet, from the smallest insect to the largest crystal tree. He understood how everything was connected, how the ecosystem worked together in perfect balance. The floating jellyfish that sang, in harmony with the trees. The crystal deer that spread pollen as they traveled. Even the moss that glowed with its own light had a purpose in the greater pattern, and he saw what humans brought to worlds like this. Not just cities and technology, but imbalance. Humans took what they needed without understanding how everything fit together. They cut down forests without knowing those trees were the lungs of the planet. They drained rivers without realizing those waters carried the voices of ancient spirits. Dragons were not rulers, Ethan explained as the visions continued. We were teachers. We helped young species understand their place in the universe. We showed them how to grow strong without destroying the worlds that gave them life. More images flowed through their connection. Dragons working alongside human scientists, sharing knowledge of clean energy and sustainable technology. Dragons helping human diplomats negotiate peace treaties with alien species. Dragons and humans together, exploring the galaxy as partners rather than conquerors. This is what we could have been, Ethan said sadly. This is what we could still be, if anyone remembers what dragons really are. Sergeant Kim, you have 5 minutes to respond before we begin bombardment. Commander Park's voice was getting angrier. Do not force us to assume you have been compromised. Taeho closed his eyes and made his choice. He activated his communicator, but instead of reporting to Commander Park, he opened a channel to Dr. Lee Ji-woo. Dr. Lee, this is Sergeant Kim. I need to speak with you privately. Emergency override Tango 77. There was a pause, then Dr. Lee's voice came through. Sergeant, what is your status? Commander Park is ready to order bombardment. Doctor, everything we know about dragons is wrong, Taeho said quickly. I'm looking at 3 baby dragons right now. They are not monsters, they are children. Innocent children. Sergeant, you may be experiencing psychic manipulation, Dr. Lee replied, but her voice sounded uncertain. Dragons are known to affect human thought patterns. Then explain this, Taeho said. He activated his helmet camera and transmitted. Everything he was seeing, the treasure-filled caves, the ancient art and artifacts, the peaceful nest, the baby dragons looking up at him with trusting eyes. He heard Dr. Lee gasp over the communication link. Are those really dragon eggs? 2 have hatched, Taeho confirmed. The 3rd just broke free a few minutes ago. Doctor, these are babies. They have never hurt anyone. They do not even know how to fly yet. My God, Dr. Lee whispered. In 15 years of studying dragons, we never found evidence of eggs or young. We assumed they reproduce differently. The coalition has been very thorough in destroying dragon families, Ethan said, his mental voice carrying. Tio Taeho. These 3 are the only children born in the last 50 years. Taeho repeated what the dragon had told him. There was a long silence on the communication channel. Sergeant, Dr. Lee finally said, you need to get out of there. Commander Park will not call off the bombardment just because you found baby dragons. If anything, she will see this as proof that dragons will continue to be a threat. That is exactly what she will think, Taeho agreed. Which is why I cannot let these children die. What are you saying, Sergeant? Taeho looked at the tiny silver dragon in his hands. She had fallen asleep, trusting him completely to keep her safe. Her brothers were curled up together in the nest, making soft breathing sounds. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. I am saying I will not complete this mission, he said. I will not murder children, no matter what species they are. Sergeant. Kim, Commander Park's voice cut into the channel. You have 2 minutes to confirm target elimination. We have been monitoring your communications. You are clearly compromised. No, Commander, Taeho replied. For the first time in 15 years, I am seeing clearly. You are disobeying direct orders, Commander Park said angrily. The penalty for treason is death. Then I guess I am a traitor, Taeho said calmly. Because I will not let you kill these babies. He cut the communication channel and looked at Ethan. The ancient dragon was watching him with something that might have been respect. You would give up everything for creatures you met 5 minutes ago, Ethan said. Your career, your life, your place among your own kind? These children deserve a chance to live, Taeho replied. They deserve a chance to grow up and make their own choices about what kind of dragons they want to be. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Taeho had never heard of a dragon doing before. He began to sing. It was not like human singing. The sound came from deep in the dragon's chest, resonating through the crystals in the cave, until the entire mountain seemed to hum with music. The baby dragons stirred at the sound, their eyes opening to look at their father. This is the song of bonding, Ethan explained as he sang. It is how dragons choose their companions and allies. It has not been sung between dragon and human for over 3,000 years. The music seemed to wrap around Taeho like a warm blanket. He felt something changing inside him, something connecting. The baby dragons began to sing too, their tiny voices joining their father's deep bass in perfect harmony. Even the silver, one in his hands, opened her little mouth and added her voice to the song. When the music ended, Taeho felt different. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, he could sense the dragon's thoughts and feelings more clearly than before. They were no longer strange aliens to him, they were family. "The bond is made," Ethan said with satisfaction. "You are now Dragon Friend, the first human to bear that title in centuries. My children will know you as protector and teacher. Commander." "Park will never understand," Taeho said. "She will order the bombardment anyway." "Perhaps," Ethan agreed. "But there is something your commander does not know, something that will change everything." The dragon's eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge. "I am not the last dragon, as your people believe. I am simply the last dragon who stayed to fight. The others—" He gestured with one massive wing toward the deeper parts of the cave system. In the shadows, Taeho could see other passages leading away into darkness. Passages that his sensors had not mapped because they went deeper than he had imagined possible. "The others are sleeping," Ethan continued, "waiting, dreaming of better times when humans and dragons might learn to live in peace. Your choice here today will determine whether they sleep forever or whether they wake to a new age of cooperation." Above them, Taeho could hear the distant rumble of spacecraft engines. The bombardment ships were taking position. In minutes, this mountain would be reduced to radioactive dust unless he could find a way to stop them. The rumble of the bombardment ships grew louder overhead. Taeho could feel the mountain shaking as the massive vessels took position in the planet's atmosphere. He had less than a minute before they would fire their weapons and turn this entire area into molten glass. "I have an idea," he said to Ethan. "But I need you to trust me completely." The ancient dragon nodded. "I have lived for 2,000 years, young warrior. I have learned to recognize honor when I see it. What do you need me to do?" Taeho gently placed the tiny silver dragon back in the nest with her brothers. All three babies looked up at him, with their enormous eyes, somehow sensing that something important was happening. He activated his communication system and opened a channel that would broadcast to every ship in the Coalition fleet, as well as to Earth and all the human colonies. "This is Sergeant Kim Taeho speaking from the surface of Kepler 442b, he said. "I want everyone to see what I am seeing." He activated his helmet camera again, but this time he broadcast everything in real time. The crystal caverns filled with ancient treasures, the art and technology of lost civilizations that dragons had preserved, and most importantly, the nest with 3 baby dragons who had never hurt anyone. "For 30 years we have been told that dragons are monsters," Taeho continued, walking slowly around the cavern so his camera could capture everything. "We have been told they are threats to humanity that must be destroyed, but look at what I have found." He zoomed in on the baby dragons. The star-scaled one made a soft cooing sound and tried to climb out of the nest. The rainbow-scaled one stretched, his tiny wings showing how delicate and beautiful they were. The silver one had gone back to sleep, curled up like a contented kitten. "These are not monsters," Taeho said. "These are children. The last dragon children in the entire galaxy." Across the galaxy, on thousands of human worlds, people stopped what they were doing to watch the broadcast. In homes and offices and schools and government buildings, humans saw dragons for what they really were for the first time in decades. Dr. Lee Dewu's voice came over the communication channel. "Sergeant, I am reading massive energy signatures from the bombardment ships. Commander Park has not called off the attack." "Then I will give her a reason to," Taeho replied. He turned his camera toward Ethan. "I want everyone to hear this. Tell them what dragons really were before humans started hunting them." Ethan's golden eyes looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his psychic voice was transmitted through Taeho's communication system, reaching every human who was watching. We were guardians, the ancient dragon said simply. For millions of years, we protected young species from destroying themselves. We prevented nuclear wars. We stopped plagues. We taught civilizations to explore space peacefully instead of as conquerors. Images flowed from Ethan's mind through Tejo's systems and out to the watching galaxy. Dragons helping primitive humans discover fire without burning down their forests. Dragons teaching early scientists about medicine and engineering. Dragons stopping wars before they could destroy entire planets. But your species was different, Ethan continued. Humans learned to kill before they learned to love. When we tried to guide you, you saw us as threats to be eliminated. So we withdrew, hoping you would learn wisdom with time. More images showed dragons retreating to distant worlds as human expansion began. Dragons trying to negotiate peace treaties that humans ignored. Dragons watching sadly as humanity repeated the same mistakes that had destroyed countless other species. When you began hunting us, Ethan said, we defended ourselves. But we never sought to destroy humanity. We hoped that someday you would remember what we tried to teach you. The broadcast was having an effect. On Earth, crowds were gathering in the streets, demanding that the government call off the attack. On the outer colonies, human settlers, who had lived in fear of dragons for decades, were seeing the truth for the first time. But Commander Park's voice cut through the growing chaos. All ships, prepare to fire on my mark. The dragon is clearly using psychic manipulation to turn our own people against us. No, Dr. Li Jiwu said firmly. I am overriding that order. As chief scientist of this mission, I am declaring the target to be of critical xenobiological importance. These creatures must be preserved for study. You do not have the authority to override my command, Park replied angrily. Actually, she does, came a new voice over the communication channel. Admiral Song Minho, the highest-ranking military officer in the sector, was speaking from the fleet command ship. Dr. Li is correct. The discovery of juvenile dragons changes everything. All ships are ordered to power down weapons and maintain safe distance. Commander Park's voice was furious. Admiral, these creatures are dangerous. They have killed thousands of humans, and we have killed thousands of them, Admiral Song replied calmly. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. Tejo felt relief wash over him, but Ethan was not finished. The ancient dragon rose to his full height, his massive form filling the cavern. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of prophecy. Humans of Earth and all your colonies, he said. I am the last adult dragon in this galaxy. When I die, there will be no one left who remembers what we were or what we tried to teach. But these 3 children represent hope for both our species. He gestured toward the nest where his babies were sleeping peacefully. I offer humanity a choice. You can continue to see dragons as enemies, and when these little ones grow up, they will learn to fear and hate you as their father was taught to fear and hate. Or, the dragon paused, letting the moment hang in the air. Or you can choose a different path. Let these children grow up among humans. Let them learn to trust and love your species as I have learned to trust this brave soldier. Dragons and humans together could explore the galaxy not as conquerors but as partners. We could teach you to find new worlds without destroying them. You could teach us to adapt to a changing universe. The broadcast reached the Earth government where emergency sessions were being called. It reached the outer colonies where humans who had never seen a dragon were weeping at the sight of the tiny babies. It reached the military academies, where young soldiers were questioning everything they had been taught about their enemies. Dr. Liu's voice came over the channel again. Sergeant Kim, the fleet is receiving thousands of communications from across human space. People are demanding that we protect the dragon children. The President of Earth has called an emergency meeting to discuss a new approach to dragon relations. Tejo looked down at the baby dragons who were starting to wake up from their nap. The little silver one looked up at him and made a happy chirping sound, recognizing him as a friend. What happens now? He asked Ethan. The ancient dragon was quiet for a moment, his golden eyes reflecting the crystal light. Now we find out if humans are truly capable of change, he said. You have given both our species a gift today. The gift of choice. What we do with that gift will determine the future of the galaxy. Over the following days, representatives from every human world came to Kepler 442b. Scientists and diplomats, soldiers and civilians, all came to see the dragon children and speak with their ancient father. Treaties were signed. Agreements were made. The Dragon Wars officially ended not with conquest, but with understanding. Ethan lived for 3 more years, long enough to see his children take their first flights and speak their first words. Long enough to see humans and dragons beginning to work together on projects that benefited both species. Long enough to know that his sacrifice had not been in vain when the great dragon finally died. It was peacefully surrounded by his children and the human friends who had come to love him. Tejo was there at the end, holding the ancient creature's massive claw as his golden eyes closed for the last time. The 3 dragon children grew up in a galaxy, very different from the one their father had known. They lived among humans, learning human languages and customs while teaching their new friends about dragon wisdom and knowledge. The silver one, who chose the name Yunbai as Tejo had suggested, became bonded with the cyborg soldier who had saved her life. Together they traveled the galaxy as ambassadors, showing other worlds that dragons and humans could work as partners. The star-scale dragon chose the name Heisung, meaning star voice, and became a teacher at the new Dragon-Human Academy. On Earth, there, young humans and the few dragons who emerged from their long sleep learned together about science and philosophy, art and exploration. The rainbow-scaled dragon took the name Bitna, meaning to shine, and dedicated her life to healing. She learned human medicine and combined it with ancient dragon knowledge to cure diseases that had plagued both species for centuries. 10 years after the discovery in the Crystal Caves, Sergeant Kim Tae-ho stood before the Galactic Council not as a weapon of war, but as an ambassador of peace. Beside him, Yunbai had grown into a magnificent creature whose silver scales caught the light like liquid metal. Her wisdom guided human exploration toward cooperation rather than conquest. We stand here today as proof, Tae-ho said to the assembled representatives of 100 worlds, that enemies can become friends, that those we fear most may be exactly what we need most. The dragons were never our enemies. They were our teachers, waiting for us to be ready to learn. Yunbai added her voice to his, her psychic words reaching every mind in the chamber. My father dreamed of a galaxy where all species could grow and thrive together. That dream is becoming reality, one world at a time. In the crystal caves of Kepler 442b, now protected as a sacred site, new dragon eggs had begun to appear. The species that had once been on the edge of extinction was slowly recovering, guided by the wisdom of humans who had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from conquering, but from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And in the deep caves beneath a dozen worlds, ancient dragons were waking from their long sleep, emerging into a galaxy where their children played safely among the stars, where their knowledge was valued instead of feared, and where the dream of true partnership between species was finally becoming real. The last dragon had not been executed that day in the crystal caves. Instead, he had become the first dragon of a new age. An age of cooperation, understanding, and hope for all the children of the galaxy. Chat control Sonnet 4.